Welcome to the Startup Club podcast, where we share the journeys of invention, failure, resilience, and triumph of some of South Africa's most exciting tech startup founders and investors. I'm Matthew Marsden, founder of Startup Club ZA, and on the show today, Thato Schermer, co-founder and CEO of Zoie Health, Africa's first holistic digital women's health and wellness platform dedicated to making female health and family planning in Africa more convenient, affordable, and caring. Now, founded in 2020, Zoie has grown exponentially and now serves more than 9,000 members and 50 healthcare providers. In 2022, they were recognized as an MTN App of the Year finalist and took first place at both Africa Business competitions at Stanford and Harvard Business Schools, respectively. Not to mention winning our very own Startup Club Healthtech of the Year award in 2023. Now, on the back of much momentum, Zoie closed their pre-seed round in June of last year, led by 4DX and E-Squared. Armed with a bold mission to change the landscape of female healthcare across Africa, it's clear that things are only just getting started for Thato and the Zoie team. Now, before we get into today's discussion, Startup Club ZA is built on impactful collaborations, and of course, today's episode is brought to you in partnership with one of those collaborators, E-Squared. E-Squared is one of South Africa's leading impact investors, providing funding and post-investment support to high-growth businesses, early-stage founders, and social enterprises, with the intention of creating meaningful employment opportunities to tackle social inequality and enable economic inclusivity. Now, we sat down with E-Squared CEO Gladwin Liu to discuss more about their work and how they support startups. And you can hear more of that interview at the halfway mark of today's episode, or visit eSquared, that's esquared.org.za to learn more. For now, let's get back to the episode.
Looking back at it, it sounds like such an exciting, interesting, positive journey, but it was really hard. We made so many mistakes, classic mistakes like overbuilding from a technology, overinvesting in technology before you're super clear on what the answer is, or not being quite sure how you're going to scale and having a plan for that. And I think a lot of those pieces we learned the hard way, right? And looking back, I may have done a few things differently, but it definitely gave us a lot of learnings and lessons early on that have provided a really strong foundation for what I believe will be the next chapter of our growth.
Now, access to healthcare is a basic human right, but when it comes to delivering on this mandate, infrastructural gaps across Africa have meant that this is often easier said than done. Thankfully, though, this is where technology has and continues to play a material role, where advancements in telemedicine, mobile health apps, and even wearables are transforming how healthcare is delivered and accessed. In fact, in 2022, it's estimated the number of mobile health users across Africa had surged to over 150 million people, with little sign of slowing down. Equally so, innovations in feminine healthcare have made significant strides in the last 5 years, fundamentally reshaping how women receive care and how healthcare providers deliver services in areas like maternal and reproductive well-being. And in South Africa, one such company looking to serve this important segment is Zoie Health. Founded by Thato Schermer and Nonhlanhla Sithole, the Zoie platform allows users to book virtual consults, purchase medication and supplements online, as well as join a community of clinicians and other women to lean on for advice and support. The team also created EasyDoc for employers. It's Africa's first WhatsApp-based health platform where for only 39 Rand per person per month, employees can engage in convenient consults with private doctors, significantly reducing absenteeism, enhancing productivity, and improving employee retention. As you'll hear in today's conversation, it was this drive to improve women's health and make a tangible difference that inspired Zoie's founders to leave their established careers to become health tech entrepreneurs. And as you can imagine, there's always more to this rollercoaster story.
So, I'm incredibly privileged. I had a wonderful upbringing. Grew up in Pretoria, and I'm always very proud of that because I think it's the heartland of the country. My mother's a doctor, so is my aunt. My grandmother was a midwife, so it was all inevitable and written in the stars. Interestingly, my younger sister is going to med school, so I think it kind of skipped me a bit, but I found my way back into the healthcare space. My father's an engineer, and I grew up in a family of four siblings. I'm a middle child, which also explains a lot. And yeah, I mean, grew up in Pretoria, spent a bit of time in the US where we moved, and we lived there for about 4 years. And really, it was wonderful formative years of my life. I even put on an American accent when I want to. It was really funny. I could talk like this all the time. And I used to say my name's Thato, but then my parents quickly whipped me back into shape and said, your name is Thato. So yeah, I had a wonderful time. Went to school at Crawford and St. Mary's, and then Pretoria High School for Girls, where I matriculated. And then, yeah, I started my journey post-grad at UCT. So
Amazing.
did business science and did my honors there as well.
I think before we get there, I'm curious to ask you, what type of, you've grown up in this environment where parents are big career people, you've got a family lineage of entrepreneurs, which you've described to me. Tell me, were you an enterprising kid? Were you the kid at school who
Not
was,
at all.
selling things, thinking about little business here and there?
Not at all, which is ironic, right? Because I was surrounded by, entrepreneurs. So both my grandmothers were entrepreneurs, and they were doing this, to support the family. On my paternal grandmother, she was actually an egg credit lender, which was very interesting. So she would sell eggs to nurses, and then mid-month when they were paid, she would follow up and recoup the money that she was owed. And she ran that so exceptionally well. I mean, she ran it so well that they were able to build a house in Limpopo from the proceeds. She was able to contribute to taking my older sister to school. And that for me was very inspiring, looking back to see myself surrounded by that. On my mum's side, my grandmother also was in commerce. She was she had a shop and a grocery, and people would go. And even my father, I mean, he had a lot of side hustles despite his corporate career. And so you would think that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, or I was going to get into that path. But no, I was not enterprising at all. I was stock standard, got very good grades, studied really hard, quite nerdy, very focused. And I would never have thought that this is something that I would pursue. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I was on my corporate path, enjoying my Sandton streets and, doing my thing in corporate Sandton. And just felt that, I really wanted to contribute to solving a problem.
Amazing.
And that was on my heart. And so that's why I started this journey.
Love that. Now we'll get into some more meat on the bone there, of course, as we just hear a little bit more about your journey and kind of navigating these big decisions. Tell me quickly, when you were, pre-UCT, you go on, you end up studying and getting your postgrad in business science. Before you get there, though, was there something you wanted to be when you grew up? Were you adamant about, man, I'm gonna go into business, I'm a corporate woman through and through? What was the thing? Fireman, doctor, what was it? Firewoman, excuse me.
Fire person.
Yeah, fire person, exactly.
Look, I had no idea.
Sure.
And that was quite difficult for me because I was very determined. I was very self-assured. I was doing extremely well at school. And I remember my matric year, I was really battling with, what it is I was going to study. I was applying everywhere. And I even got like a counselor to help me think about my future career. I would ask my teachers, the headmistress. Everyone would say, oh, but you're getting such good grades. You're so smart. So you basically have 3 career options, right? CA, engineer, or actuarial scientist. Like that's what we see. And that's where all the scholarships are. But none of them really resonated with me. But I ended up applying for engineering and I got in. And very soon I realized when I got to UCT that I do not want to be an engineer. Mass balances, forces. I mean, I respect engineers a lot. Very great problem solvers, but I knew it wasn't for me. And I wanted to enjoy my 4-year journey. And I always knew that I wanted to be in business in some way, shape, or form. So even if I was going to do engineering, I always knew at the end of the day I wanted to be in business. And my big thing with business was that, I always believed, even from the time I was a teenager, that business can be a force for good. And I was always asking myself, how can business contribute to solving problems in society? beyond just employing people and beyond just paying tax. So I'd always been enthused by that idea. So I always knew I wanted to be in business. And so I decided to make the switch into the Faculty of Commerce.
Before we continue, you have had one small hair pop up there on your head. I want to make sure we just flatten that for the cameras. No, it's actually right in the middle. There we go. Middle of.
Yeah.
There we go. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. No problem. I'm keeping us accountable here. But that's fine. So we're going to end on that, and we'll just hit it accordingly. By the way, anything we can take out, so we're good. Okay, so you do your postgrad honors with this idea, business is a force for good, and it's uncanny to me how few of our guests had resolved what they wanted to be. So I don't know that is, maybe there's a bit of a trend there rather. But this is 2010 to 2014. You finished your business science postgrad, marketing, economics, and business. I know that you have a relationship with the Ellen Gray Orbis Foundation, and a number of our guests have. As you know, we've partnered with E Squared as well. Maybe just tell us a little bit about that journey, because they also do play quite a key role in the Zoie Health journey. So
Absolutely.
if you don't mind, just talk to our audience about what that was like.
Sure.
In your studies.
Looking back, it's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I got chosen to be an Ellen Gray Fellow. I went to summer camp in Matric. And the Ellen Gray Orbis Foundation provides a wonderful fellowship over the course of your university career, where they fund your studies, also provide you with an allowance, but very importantly, give you professional and personal development training. And looking back at it, it's a kind of training or access that many young people just don't have, right? And so to be able to be thinking about problem solving, contribution to society at 18, 19, 20 years old was a real privilege. And so I remember being part of the foundation. I really enjoyed it. I was very, very social, made many lifelong friends. I was always entering. We had this assignment where we'd had to submit, they were called E-points, I think, or E-assessments. And we basically had to come up with ideas to solve problems in society. And we had to submit them every quarter. And I was obsessed with this. I would just come up with random ideas, and then they would be like, wow, slow down, So a couple of the years I won the Most Entrepreneurial Fellow Award. You would think that would be a sign, but I was just like, no, I just like sharing ideas and submitting for my P points or my E points. And one thing that was quite remarkable about the foundation is that from the beginning, they embed in you this idea that, you can be an entrepreneur, you can solve problems, you can contribute to society and be a responsible entrepreneur. And at the time, I was just like, no, this is great. I'm going to learn lessons, and I'm going to go to corporate, and I'm going to rise to the ranks of corporates, and I'm going to be someone senior at some fancy company. I never not once thought about being an entrepreneur. And it's funny because a lot of those lessons that I learned over my 4 years being an Ellen Gray Fellow, I apply today, like how do you problem solve? How do you think about being a responsible entrepreneur? How do you think about ethics? How do you think about leadership and service? And all those lessons are coming to fruition now.
It's really privy insights and frameworks, man. I often wonder if that can't be scaled, right? But one of the reasons we've partnered with the broader team as well, just because of the amazing work they're doing. Now, you're finishing up university. You want to be a career woman.
Yes.
Talk to me about what those first few steps are like. Now you've graduated. What do you do? Right,
Yeah.
The world's your oyster. You've presumably had great grades. A graduate from a great university in South Africa. What do you choose to do first?
Interesting. So throughout my university career, I would spend my holidays working, interning. And that was for me to get a sense of what was out there and to learn and make a bit of money also on the side.
Sure.
And my first internship was actually at a magazine, at Glamour magazine. And I was the first and the youngest intern they'd ever had in the editorial team. So I worked directly on articles. I was interviewing these celebrities, and I felt very proud because my articles were being published in Glamour. And I was quite a writer back in the day. But then throughout, I experimented with different internships. One I did was with Procter & Gamble in my honors year, and the other was with McKinsey in my third year. And I immediately knew when I did my McKinsey internship that this is a place that I could see myself in. I could imagine myself as a partner. I was like, this is the life. You get to travel, you work across amazing clients, you get to solve amazing problems. And my internship experience there really confirmed that for me. I worked across, a very interesting project, managed to get an offer to return post graduation, but then I also got an offer from Procter & Gamble. So I was really battling with, what to choose. And being in kind of the marketing space initially and economics, Procter & Gamble, is a fantastic global brand, really well-established brand. It's kind of the place to build out a brand or a marketing career. Then McKinsey was interesting because, the lessons that you learn are much more around problem solving and like core fundamentals. And so decided to go with McKinsey, much to my father's chagrin. He was like, just do Procter & Gamble. It's predictable, it's solid. You can, rise through the ranks. And I was grateful for that experience. I loved my time at Procter & Gamble. So decided to go into consulting. And I think that was also one of the best things that could have happened to me because through that experience, I learned some foundational lessons, right, around how to problem solve, how to communicate, how to, think structurally. And I always say to people, my management consulting career is a gift that keeps on giving because so many of those skills I learned all those years ago, I use today in my business as an entrepreneur.
Now, you spend the better part of only a year and a half at McKinsey & Co. And I also had the management consulting bug bite me when I was graduating and saw the next 10 years of my life planned out, right? They were gonna pay for your MBA at some amazing Ivy League schools, and you were gonna learn all these things and be on the partner track. Like you chose not to go down that road. What was the thing? Why would you step out of quite a promising trajectory?
That's interesting, and I think it's a question that a lot of folks at the firm were asking me as well at the time. Like, what are you doing? You're on a great path. You're doing so well. But I think it was a number of things. One, I was really battling with burnout. I think I was probably putting a lot of extra pressure on myself, and so that was really hard. And I got quite ill at different points. And then secondly, I did enjoy my time there, but I felt that I wanted to do more, right? Beyond just the initial strategy advice. I wanted to really get my hands dirty and I wanted to experience what that was like on the other side. And then I made a call then to leave the firm and actually join Discovery, which was also a wonderful time in my career. Interestingly, when I left the firm, I went to work for a former partner of the firm, of McKinsey, and he would be my boss for, the next 3-4 years, and learned a lot from him. I felt like I was still at the firm in a way because I was learning so many fundamental lessons from him, working, alongside him directly.
Amazing. So this is a semi-chief of staff role, I believe, to the CEO of Discovery Vitality. Again, a pretty significant role early in one's career. So outside of the day-to-day responsibilities, just what you are privy to and the decision-making and the rooms you get to enter. Pretty amazing. You spend a couple of years there, and then in 2019, you take a role at another healthcare business, kind of making our way back into the healthcare space here, as we can see, slowly, surely.
Exactly.
Talk to us about that move.
Yeah, that was a pretty tricky decision
Sure.
that I made. My boss at the time, he got headhunted to be the global CEO of Life Healthcare, which is a listed hospital group. And at the time, I had kind of finished my chief of staff stuff. I'd done it for 2 years. I was looking at other roles within Discovery. And he, made an offer and he said, look, let's see, do you want to come along with me? And I think there's some interesting things we could do around transforming healthcare. And that was super compelling. And I'd enjoyed my time working with him. I'd learned so much. And so then that's why, and when I moved across to Life Healthcare. Life Healthcare was also a wonderful, wonderful experience. I think at the time, the vision with under my boss's leadership was really around how do we use technology to transform healthcare and make healthcare much more accessible to ordinary South Africans. And through that, I had the privilege of leading a project called the My Life Clinic, where we basically built out a paperless clinic, end-to-end services. You'd be able to come in for about 250 Rand a consult, get all the care that you need. And we launched the pilot site at Campus Square in Johannesburg. And that for me was just like ding, 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 ding. One, because I saw that this is something that was possible, and the impact it was making to ordinary people who would come in and get this affordable healthcare at such an amazing price point. 2, then I got to see, I mean, it was technology driven, right? It was technology first kind of model. And I got to see that, okay, like real technology can really have an impact in this space and improve access and convenience in a meaningful way. And that's when I think the bug really, really bit me.
Now, before we get into the Zoe story, because we're almost there, you take an interesting stint of all places at Uber.
Yes.
So you've come off the back of some consulting,
Yes.
very medical health insurance industry for a couple of years, and then join Uber. Tell us about that decision very quickly.
Yeah, that was another wacky one.
Sure.
If you look, it's interesting. If you look back at all my choices, it doesn't seem like they fit together. But actually, now when you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. I went to Uber because I knew that I wanted to be in technology. So, given my experience at Life Healthcare, I saw the possibility and the impact of technology and the possibilities. And I thought to myself, well, if I want to be in technology, I've got to learn from the best. And Uber had been growing rapidly at the time. It had made, an indelible mark in South Africa. And I was curious about what that looked like. I was also intrigued by the fact that there were these 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds running this business with their MacBooks, and it was very Silicon Valley. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I don't have to be in a traditional corporate. People were wearing relaxed clothing. And I was like, that is interesting. And interestingly, I joined Uber within the sales team. So I was territory manager of Uber for Business. And it was a very heavy sales role. And coming from a background of strategy and consulting and that kind of thinking, business development, I was like, what is this sales thing? And I remember I was incredibly frustrated, right? Because, it's hardcore sales. Like you call into clients, you go and pitch them, you sign contracts, you move on to the next. Not much strategy and slides and that kind of thing that I was used to. And so it was incredibly frustrating. But I'm glad that I got that experience and exposure, because B2B is such an important skill. B2B sales is such an important skill to learn. And I got a lot of training and lessons there that I'm actually using today, whether it's fundraising or whether it's trying to acquire new B2B clients. A lot of those fundamental and foundational skills I learned at Uber. So as much as initially I was frustrated and I was like, oh, it's not what I want to do, I learned a lot. I had amazing colleagues. I learned a lot from them. It was an incredible business, got amazing opportunities to travel and learn from the best. And so, yeah, that was great training for where I am today.
Amazing. One can't obviously help but look at all of these senior experiences, different areas of focus, perhaps you've alluded to it already, in consulting and problem solving, some more execution, a little bit of tech, a little bit of sales. And now I guess we reach the kind of precipice, right? The point at which you decide, well, flip, I'm going to start a venture of my own. And I would like us just to spend a little bit of time here because, they say the wealthiest place in the world is the graveyard.
Yes.
Because of all the ideas that have died with people, right? And fundamentally, you have so many folks that have great ideas, in many respects have a similar career trajectory. They might even be better positioned to take the leap into something, and most don't. And so I love just spending a little bit of time here around, talk to us about that season. 2019, 2020, you're at Uber, of course. 2020, formative year, COVID lockdowns, material impact on the Uber business. Does that have an impact? But what makes you go from this very linear career growth kind of role and journey to deciding, no, this thing has to exist and I want to be the person to make that happen? Share with us.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I feel like I'm an accidental entrepreneur. It was not part of my plan. If I had it my way, I would have just continued, the corporate trajectory, and I was really enthused and excited about that journey. Then the pandemic hit, and obviously that was super, super hectic for all of us. And I think I paused in that moment and I thought, okay, well, from an Uber side, we were actually doing quite well. Uber for Business, because we're partnering with corporates for essential worker, transportation. And I thought, well, this is the greatest health crisis of our generation. And I loved working in healthcare, and I thought, I want to be able to contribute into this space, right? I want to spend my time, my hard work, my energy, my talents contributing to solving this a problem within this space. And at the time, I wasn't quite sure what it would be, but I knew, it had to be in this space. And so with my co-founder, we started thinking around specific problems we could solve in healthcare.
Where did you meet each other?
So we're cousins.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So
And she was feeling the same? Was she?
Yes.
Yeah?
So she has a clinical background. She's a PhD in molecular and cell biology. And we just would, talk a lot about, the healthcare. There's so much opportunity. There's so much change that could happen. And both of us are women, of course. And so what was interesting was that, we were sharing our own personal experiences with women's health. And we spoke to a lot of our friends and family, and their experience was echoed in ours. And I was pulling on a lot of my previous healthcare experience that no one was really solving around female consumers as a health category, right? Women have very unique healthcare needs from puberty through to menopause. They are the primary decision makers and economic buyers of healthcare. And they need healthcare not just when they're sick, but through, all healthcare seasons. And so that's when we started really ideating on this topic and really thinking about what it could be. We did focus groups and interviews and so many different things to just really try to get to the heart of it. And what enabled me and allowed me to actually take that leap, and it would not have been possible without this, was the Pathways program. So we were selected as part of the Pathways program at E Squared, which is kind of their incubator program for early stage ideas. And they give you a small grant, but also a little bit of support, advisory support. And that allowed us to really double down on the idea. And looking back at it, and that's why I empathize with many people who've got ideas but are in corporate and can't really leave, because it's very difficult, right? You need money, there are bills to pay, there are many responsibilities that many people in this country have towards
Was that
their
grant
family.
enough to warrant you leaving? Was it enough to at least bridge a bit of a gap?
Yes,
for you? Yeah.
it was, and that's the only thing that would have
Amazing.
enabled me to go and really take the leap that then started a series of other leaps, and I'll be eternally grateful for that. I think E Squared has played a really amazing role in the growth of me as a human being, but in the company. And so started there. It was an idea on a piece of paper with some research, some thoughts. And they took a bet on us, and they said, "Okay, look, let's help work through this idea, and let's help you unpack this." And so that was the start of Zoie.
Amazing. What was the idea? So you've recognized, great. We've got bespoke needs as women. Obviously, bespoke healthcare needs that were either being underserviced or too expensive or too timely. What was the gap?
Yeah.
And then how did you think, well, if we built X, it could solve the gap?
Yeah. So the gap was definitely one. It was an access gap, right? So South Africa is interesting in that we have a wonderful private sector, well developed, top clinicians, really wonderful access. It's just expensive, even with medical aid. There's still a lot of co-payments, and it's sometimes complex to navigate. The public sector, I think, everyone's trying their best, but it is overburdened, and it means that it's not super efficient. So people lose a lot of time trying to access services there. And so we thought, okay, well, we can use technology to try solve this missing middle, right? Make it affordable, accessible, convenient, and easy, so that people who would frequent the public sector would be able to use these services, but also people who have access to private healthcare, so it makes it easy and convenient. The second piece is around convenience, of course, right? So as I mentioned, even in the private sector, you're traveling to the doctor, you're waiting for some time to get a basic script for something like, let's say, contraception. In the public sector, you're waiting in line for hours, sometimes a whole day, just to access very basic, family planning services, for example. And so we thought, okay, we can make this easier by making it digital. And what struck me at the time, and maybe it's me being an elderly millennial, was that so much of our lives is digital, right? We've got Netflix, we order our food online, we order Ubers online, but our healthcare was so analog. And so we're like, okay, let's figure this piece out. And I think what's interesting about the journey is that there've been so many iterations of it. So initially we just started with a community focus and having practitioners as well as various women join other women in similar healthcare seasons to get healthcare input. Then we added telemedicine, and then we added contraception subscriptions, which were super, super popular. And then we expanded our e-commerce offering, and then we got a pharmacy license. And so that allowed us to, I guess we were following the data. So initially it was like, okay, we want to solve this big problem, right? And it's such a big problem to solve. Where do you start? And so through the process of taking that first step, then we're able to iterate until we got where we are today.
I'm curious as we just maybe dive deep on some of those key moments in the journey? Again, it's only been a 4-year journey, so it's not like, it feels like a 20-year journey, I'm sure. But talk to me about, there's these ideas of having to, validate product market fit, and there's these, telemedicine at the time was exploding. A lot of folks, especially post-COVID, saw the opportunity there. You've got your big incumbents looking to enter the space. Talk to me about how this was received. How did you build? Secondly, even the Pathways grant is not enough to go out and hire the world's best devs and salespeople.
Yeah.
It's you and your co-founder, right? So talk to me about those early days. What was it actually like? Where were the points where you were like, man, we're onto something here? Where were the perhaps low points that didn't quite work? Or we're actually a little bit at the end of our tether here. Yeah.
Sure, it's been such an up and down journey, right? And had I known how difficult it would be, I don't know if I would have made the leap. People always say that, like, it was really painful, but I think it's definitely been worth it. I think the first time we knew that we were onto something, I think, was when we were doing research and connecting with other women, right? Not just friends and family who want to say nice things, but, strangers out there who are like, where has this been all my life? Like, yes, we need help solving this problem, and reaffirming the size of the problem, I think, was the first piece. The second piece, and I'll never forget this, was when we had our first paying customer. We had stitched together, no engineer, no nothing. We'd stitched together like a type form and a Calendly and something. And somehow then the payment came through. I think there was a Yoko link somewhere involved. And we were like, whoa, someone paid for this to get, access to this service. And they were not a family member. They were not a friend. There were no one we knew. And we were like, okay, so there is something out there. There is something to this. And very early on, we were we hustled a lot, right? So we would, my co-founder would like drive. At the time, we're experimenting with like home care. So she'd drive the nurse to the patient and like see what the patient would say, get the feedback. They'd do the consult, and then we'd get feedback and kind of iterate. We would like get a locum doctor for the day, literally, and like pay them for the day, like do a couple of consults, and let's look at the feedback. Let's get the feedback about what that would be. And I think it's really important to be very quick and dirty, especially early on. We stitched together various platforms, whether it's Airtable, Typeforms. I built our first website on Squarespace. I'm glad it's not our website currently, because it wasn't the best. Our current VP of engineering would roll her eyes and be like, what is this? But it was something to get us started. And I think using some of these quick and dirty tactics to get at least early validation from the market, I think is really important. Through that process, then we were able to kind of grow through the Pathways program, which enabled us to get access to more funding. And that's when we were able to bring in a little bit more, technology support. We worked with an agency initially to build the initial structure of the platform, as well as worked with a part-time developer who's now our VP of engineering, to get those initial moments going. And looking back at it, I mean, it sounds like such an exciting, interesting, positive journey, but it was really hard. We made so many mistakes, classic mistakes like overbuilding from overinvesting in technology before you're super, super clear on like what the answer is, or not being quite sure how you're going to scale and having a plan for that. And I think a lot of those pieces we learned the hard way, right? And looking back, I may have done a few things differently, but it definitely gave us a lot of learnings and lessons early on that have provided a really strong foundation for what I believe will be the next chapter of our growth.
We trust you're enjoying today's episode, produced in partnership with our friends at E Squared. Now we're going to take a quick break and hear from our conversation with E Squared CEO Gladwin Liu before getting back to today's conversation.
Hi guys, I'm Gladwin Liu. I'm the CEO of E Squared Investments, and I'm happy to be here with you today. It was the auspices of Dr. Alan Gray, and he sold 20% of Alan Gray Limited to E Squared Investments. And the whole purpose behind it was for E Squared to establish, or the purpose behind E Squared to become a South African impact investor that focuses on both investment and post-investment support for high growth entrepreneurs, for social entrepreneurship businesses, through which we do grants, and as well as very early stage founders. Our mission is social upliftment. If you look at all of our branding online, it's about attacking poverty and creating economically equal South Africa. And that's why we're an impact investor rather than just an investor. We're a permanent capital vehicle, which means we invest off of our own balance sheet, which is very important for founders. So that means that we don't have to create liquidation events every 7 to 10 years in order to create value for our shareholders. So we can be more patient. And so with the mandate or the mission to attack poverty and create an economically equal South Africa, the two mechanisms that Dr. Alan Gray wrote into the trust deed, along with obviously the partners at the time, was for E Squared to use the conduits for us to achieve this mission was the fellow community. And I'm sure there's close to 1,000 fellows at the moment, where E Squared, in partnership with Alan Gray Orbis Foundation, have a synergistic relationship in the sense that individuals that have received Alan Gray Orbis Foundation scholarships then finish curriculum with the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation, or AGOF. And once they've completed their degrees, as well as completed the curriculum with AGOF, they then get inducted into the association of the Alan Gray Orbis Foundation Association, and that's what we call fellows. And so it's a fellow community, as well as supporting non-profit organizations that have public benefit organization status in order to assist social entrepreneurs in creating jobs and social upliftment. We as E Squared stand for creating those, and our ultimate goal is lives meaningfully improved. And so we want to meaningfully improve lives of South Africans. And so how we choose to do that is through entrepreneurship and through entrepreneurial vehicles. And so we invest and provide not just equity or equity-like instruments, but we also provide grants, like I said, to social entrepreneurs that then become catalysts for job creation. And we've got a couple of examples of how we do that. So if you look at fellow interventions, we've got Startup Founder Pitch. And the Startup Founder Pitch is essentially for very early stage, your concept stage of your business life cycle. The next stage then would be what we call Pathways. And Pathways is a very early stage, flexible venture builder. Then you've got E2V or E Squared Ventures that I mentioned. E Squared Ventures can fund anything from seed stage all the way to around Series C, Series D. Businesses that generally come into E2V are at your traction stage. And so we invest all the way through to the growth stages. It's about attacking poverty and creating economically equal South Africa, and so we are very passionate about supporting non-fellows as well. And so there's 3 vehicles that are targeted at non-fellow founders. And so we have a partnership where we are a 50% shareholder, as well as one of the limited partners with 3 Capital Ventures. And so that's run by Sizwe Ngumalo and his team. So if you're a non-fellow, that would be the first route into potentially working alongside E Squared and our partner 3 Capital Ventures. We this year launched our co-investment fund that's rules-based, where we're looking to support Black and female founded ventures. And then finally, it's not public knowledge yet, but we are looking at partnering with a very prominent South African fund of funds, where we will provide high impact seed fund of funds. So it's a high impact seed fund of funds structure where we will provide funding as a limited partner into seed stage investors in order to bridge the gap. I think what makes eSquared special is the fact that, and I've alluded to it a couple of times now, is the fact that we're a permanent capital vehicle, so we're investing off of our own balance sheet. And I think because of this important distinction, so we are a lot more patient in how we approach founders. And eSquared has set up a post-investment function within our organization to walk alongside entrepreneurs, to do the network introductions, to provide strategic support, to help set up boards. What also makes us special is the fact that we're industry agnostic. And I know that a lot of funds are high growth in nature, and by us investing across the board, we tend to see our real world assets and real needs. We are able to support those entrepreneurs as well. And the other thing is that we can invest all the way from pre-seed all the way through to Series C, Series D, which means we have the capability to walk alongside you for the long haul. Yeah, so we've decided to partner with Startup Club. One, it's the networking capability for ourselves as eSquared from a sourcing perspective, both of talent and of interesting startups. It's the ability for our staff and our community in terms of the Alan Gray Fellows to get exposure to like-minded individuals as well as talent that could join their startups. And it's about the diversity in conversation that's happening as well on the platform, where you have founders and investors and venture builders and so many ecosystem partners coming together and engaging. And so I believe that this is the time for as eSquared re-engages with the ecosystem as a whole, that this partnership is important for us for all of the things I mentioned at the start, but also for us as a brand to get exposure. And so it's a very important partnership for us. We've got such a great opportunity as an ecosystem player. And the saying that I like to use is this old analogy, and I don't know who said it, but the rising tide raises all boats. And so we'd like to think from an eSquared perspective, as we look through our new strategy for 2030, that we want to be that tide that comes in and uplifts the community and the ecosystem, whether it be through limited partner engagements, whether it be through just funding investment opportunities, or whether it is ecosystem players or support functions that are coming onto our platform to support some of our startups through the post-investment support functions that we have. Come and chat to us, and let's see how we can partner going forward. So if anybody wants to learn more, you can reach us at eSquared, so esquared.org.za. .org is .org.za. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much for the partnership, and we look forward to working with you this year.
That was Gladwin Liu, CEO of eSquared. Thanks for listening, and now back to today's episode. I haven't asked you this yet, but where's the name Zoie from?
Interesting. So yeah, we were like, what are we going to call this thing? And we always wanted it to be feminine or feminine sounding, because we were focused on women's health. And Zoie means life in abundance. And so we thought, okay, well, for the women we want to serve, we want to provide them or offer them life in abundance and just, care for them, because so many women care for others, right? Like women are caring for their families, for their friends, for their kids, for their husbands or their partners, and who's caring for them. And so we wanted to make sure that we embodied that in our name. And then we wanted to add a funky spelling, because we're like, oh, let's make it different. So we get
very
really
tech startup. Yes,
I know, we're like, let's make it different, because we can't just spell it the normal Zoe way. Sure. So now, it's gotten us in a bit of a pickle, because some people call it Zoe, Zoe, Zio, but it is what it is. I mean, it's the choices we made, but yeah, that's it. So you can. So
most founders are coming up with whatever their domain name as they can buy,
100%.
right? So I think this is actually one of the more rational, rational names and spellings that I've heard. 2023 is a pretty important year in the context of the business, and obviously 2020 to 23 is, having been on the startup founder journey myself, it is a day by day, almost roller coaster. It is the best day of your life, and then a customer reviews you poorly, and you're like, "Why am I doing this?" Or funding is running out, or product breaks, or all the things that I know the founders listening in here can relate to. Ironically, so necessary, right? So necessary in building that muscle of being a great founder. So much of what's not spoken about, and before we get into what happened last year, is just the family, the support, maybe mental well-being side of all of this, because it is one heck of a journey and highly taxing. I had the pleasure of meeting your wonderful husband. You guys got married. It might have been in the season, actually. Was it in the season?
We got married in 2020.
Okay, in 2020. So right in it,
pandemic,
right?
Yeah.
Ironically, the year that I left to start my first venture was the year I got married as well. So I get it. I get it. And that I often, we were speaking about this offline. It can be a superpower if your partner gets that. But, maybe just from your side, how has this all been balancing? You're also a new mom.
Yes. Yeah.
How's it all been balancing all of this? And what's been good, what's been bad? What can you maybe recommend? Some balance hacks, if you would.
My goodness, I don't know if I could recommend anything because it's absolutely brutal. But I think what's so important for any founder is the support structure that you build, both within your business as well as at home. I read a Harvard Business School article a number of years ago when I was still in corporate about, particularly for women, the best option you have is either no partner or a super supportive partner. Because I think if you're ambitious or you're super driven and you want to do things like this, it's incredibly taxing. And so I'm incredibly blessed and very privileged to have the husband that I have, who's played a really amazing role in my journey as an entrepreneur. Many times I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go back to corporate. Corporate is nice. Corporate is easy. Corporate is relaxed. I'll make more money. But just having that person to root for you and to support you, and also be able to hold down, the fort at home and help. And I have a baby. I mean, my baby's 15 months now. Or that's my second baby. My first baby, Zoe, is like 3 years old now. And it's not easy, but I think having the support system, both through my family, my incredible friends, an incredible team, has been amazing. And I don't think you can do it without a proper support system. But despite that, I mean, there have been hard moments, right? I think what a lot of people don't talk about is the tax this takes on founders, especially mentally. The anxiety you feel, is this going to work? Am I going to fail? Am I a bad person? Did I make the right decision? Like you mentioned, the roller coasters. At 9 a.m., you get a fantastic review. At 1 p.m., an investor's like, I don't want to invest in you. And the roller coaster, and what does it mean, balancing those emotions? It's incredibly, incredibly, incredibly difficult. And it's incredibly hard to also prioritize yourself and look after yourself, because any marginal amount of time, you're like trying to work on the business, you're trying to solve a problem, something breaks, you're trying to fix it. And I think it's something that, we don't talk about a lot as founders. You got to be strong. You got to keep persevering. You got to be resilient. You got to have grit. And those things are important, but I think it's okay sometimes to be vulnerable and to be like, this is really hard and I'm struggling and I'm incredibly, incredibly anxious. And I've been very anxious throughout this journey, trying to figure out, like, are we going to make it? Are we not? Am I doing the right thing? Am I not? Having to make very difficult decisions along the way, pivot the business, change directions. And it's super hard. And so I just wish more, the ecosystem and more founders would be open about it. Because you also want to be strong for your investors and be like, okay, I'm trying this and, I'm trying this now. And, you want to seem like you've got it together because you don't want to lose the confidence of whether it's your team or your investors or those who've supported you or even your customers, right? And so I think it does take a massive toll, but that's why I think support is really, really important.
Sure.
And just trying to look after yourself. I'm very bad at that, so I'm not going to preach that to anybody. But I think I probably would have invested a little bit more in that over the last 3 years.
If anyone wants to see Thato in action, we have a highlights video of our Startup and Ecosystem Awards in December last year, with her baby in hand receiving the Healthtech of the Year award prize. So if there is no better picture of balancing this life, then checking that out if you'd like to do so. Thato, I want to just talk to you about, so 2023 we've mentioned, important year in the life of Zoie. You end up closing a pre-seed round led by 40X, really reputable Pan-African investor, and E Squared has come in, participated again, just talking about the Allen Gray Association there. One of the things is that, there's just absolutely zero template for fundraising. It is almost one of the few skills that just actually, the more you do it, the better conditioned you are. But coming out of the gates as a first-time founder, there's almost no template on how to do that well. Talk to our audience about just, again, you are maybe one of the privileged few who have some grant capital, but that's not going to help you build a tech startup, certainly not the type of scale that you can reach with a business like this. Talk to us about your actual fundraising journey. Before closing this round, what was it like? Some key lessons, perhaps, some things that were easier, some things that were harder. Maybe just share some of those insights with our listeners, if you don't mind.
So, I mean, initially, obviously, we started around 2021, which was an exciting time in the ecosystem. People were raising at crazy valuations. There was a lot happening. And we were lucky enough, as I mentioned, to get on the Pathways program, which provided us, a little bit of capital. But then we also got access to First Check Africa, run by two reputable run by two reputable tech women in the ecosystem out of Nigeria, but they are, they're really, really experienced. And so they call it First Check because they want to give the first check to female founders. And I think having them on board, the capital, but also the strategic support was really important, right? Because some of these fundamental things around, like, how do you tell the narrative about your startup? How do you fundraise? Those are the things that I learned from them, from Eloho and Odun around running a structured fundraising process. How do you think about which types of investors to approach? And then we got into the ODX accelerator. So it was from the ODF fund. It's now since closed down. It was based out of New York, and they gave, a small kind of check. And that actually helped us kind of get to the point where we felt like we were ready for institutional an institutional round. And that's when we approached 40X, and that's when we approached E Squared. And even then, I think we were very, very early, right? I think we had signs of a decent product. We have good feedback from users, but we certainly hadn't achieved scale. And I think in the ecosystem, people like that or funders like that are so, so important, who will give you that initial belief capital, who back the problem you're trying to solve and back you as a founder or founding team, because they don't actually really know what the end product, what the final thing is going to look like, right? And so they back you and they trust you, and then you kind of evolve your product as you go. And so I think for us, it's been really helpful to have them on board, and I don't take that privilege lightly. Unfortunately, there's not enough funding for entrepreneurs in South Africa, especially female entrepreneurs, even across the continent, even globally, right? And many, many people have brilliant ideas. They're brilliant, brilliant founders, brilliant potential, but they just don't have access to funding. They'll give them access to mentorship classes and things like this, which is wonderful, but you need capital, especially if you're trying to build a scalable tech business. And so very, very fortunate to have had those two backers institutionally on our cap table. Through the time, we've also won a couple of grants and a few awards that have added to that. But certainly, the institutional investors have helped us get to where we are today.
Amazing. So, on the back of that, obviously now some cash comes into the bank. You're navigating where to spend that most efficiently, and most founders don't get it right the first time, but it is what it is. Into 2024, you've got several thousand members. Done some cool things this year. Got into Google for Startups program, and again, talking to some of these support mechanisms available. You've also decided to pivot the business, and maybe talk to us about what made you decide that. Of course, building a B2C business anywhere in the world takes typically materially longer, and it's really hard to get to market. Did you find the same here in South Africa, despite the niche, the focus that you have? And what has that meant for Pivoted Product?
Great question. I'm a ardent listener of a podcast called How I Built This by Guy Raz.
Oh, my favorite.
I know. I love it. I feel like I'm in business school every time I like that. And look, I think what was always clear and what I always knew from the beginning was that to get meaningful scale, especially if you're going to take venture dollars, you need to do B2B, especially on the continent. B2C works in large markets like the US where, people, achieve massive valuations, massive revenue. But I think, here to get the meaningful scale, you always need to go B2B. But before going B2B, we always knew we needed to perfect the B2C experience, right? Because at the end of the day, even if someone else is paying for it, the end user must be satisfied with the product. They must trust the product. They must feel that they're getting the help that they need. And so we spend quite a bit of time getting those foundations right, and building that infrastructure. So from an operations experience, all the licensing we needed, making sure that we're getting the member experience right, and the right products and the right services and all of that. But yeah, we always knew, B2B. And so we experimented with a few different models within the B2B space, didn't quite work out over the course of 2023, because we believe that, there is a place for this as a benefit, to employees. There is space in the market, but I think the initial version of the product didn't quite stick. And so through an iterative process, feedback from the market, we've updated that. And so now this year we've landed on something that we really, really believe will add a ton of value to corporates, but also to end users. And what's great is that we spent all these years building the rails and the infrastructure, right? So everything runs on what we have today. We've got exceptional customer experience scores. We've got wonderful providers on our platform. We've got a pipeline of over 300 providers. We've got a wonderful team. We've got really strong technology. And so I'm really excited about this next phase. It hurt to go through the you think you have this and then you're like, oh, what a great product. And then it kind of doesn't work. Then you try this and it doesn't work. But I'm grateful for that iterative process because it's helped us get to something right now that's very, very exciting and that we're super, super excited to be doubling down on and growing.
Maybe share what that is.
Yeah. So
tell us about that.
For us, it's really about providing affordable employee health cover. I think, the incumbents have done a great job providing cover medical scheme or medical aid cover for many, many South Africans, but there's still many people that don't have access to that because it's simply, too expensive. And so the question we asked ourselves was, how do we make this accessible and affordable, which has always been the heart of what we're trying to do at Zoie. And so we've built out this platform where, companies are able to subsidize medical cover for their employees, primary care cover for their employees predominantly at really affordable price points, so ranging from 39 Rand per employee per month up to 150 Rand per employee per month. And specifically targeted at blue collar workers who today don't really have access to, convenient, accessible and affordable healthcare. And that, current options are just a bit too expensive either for them or for their employers. And so it's a really exciting time. It's tech-led, so we leverage WhatsApp as the predominant platform. And individuals are able to access our healthcare services through that, subsidized by the company at really, really affordable rates. And so we're excited to double down in South Africa, but we're already receiving a lot of interest from companies across the continent because, they aren't even medical aids or schemes. And so we're really, really excited to be expanding this product. And I really believe this is the next phase of our growth.
I love that. And I think your conviction is tangible, which is awesome, right? So I think as the CEO, you've got to have that. I think it makes a nice segue just into talking about very briefly, just competing in this market. Not an opportunity. I mean, it's rare. It's rare these days that any idea is proprietary, if we're honest, right? And actually, sometimes in Africa, one of the blessings is that we get to see some stuff launched in more developed markets, and then you can kind of learn from best practice there. But talk to me about how you compete in this space, because again, you've got well-capitalized household names, incumbents with distribution that's hard to match. Of course, you've got the novelty here of a really cool tech-enabled product, but how do you take a Zoie to market with conviction and go like, man, we've carved out this niche. What is that thing? Because it's often the place where a venture goes from 1 to 2 or 1 to 100, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, looking back, people often say that second time founders, they've learned from the battle scars. I think looking back now, I would have focused much more on distribution from the beginning, right? I think, yes, we've built a wonderful product and that's exciting and that's wonderful, but distribution is what makes or breaks scalable ventures. And that's part of the thing we're trying to crack now. It's part of, the next phase of our growth is really understanding what are the right distribution channels, who are the right scale partners, what are the right channel partnerships. And importantly, I think for me, it's been a humbling experience to know my own limitations, right? So I can pitch, I can sell, I can speak decently, but I'm no experienced BD or salesperson, even though I had a little bit of that experience at Uber. And so learning when to bring in the right people in your business to help take it to the next level. We managed to do that, of course, with our practitioners, and our head of operations is a fantastic example of that, our VP of engineering. And now I think, it's important to step back and say, okay, where is it that we need the support to take what we know is a great product to market, right, in a way that helps it scale. People who've been there and who've done it, right, and bringing those people on board, whether as advisors or people within the company, to help take it to the next level. And I think that's so important, understanding at what point that is, because I can have a strategy, I can have a plan that, okay, we're going to go to these corporates and we're going to partner with these channel partners to help us reach scale. But having people who've kind of been there and have done it, and are able to say, okay, listen, this is how I think we should take it. I think is important in any life cycle of a startup, and understanding where that is. And so that's kind of the problem we're trying to crack now. I think we've got early positive signs, but it's still very early in this particular journey. We've only really been at it for about 3-4 months. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like. We've gotten a couple of amazing people on board. But yeah, it's really about knocking on the doors, getting in front of the right people, getting the right partnerships, and hopefully scaling.
Now we've only got a couple of minutes left, regrettably, because I'm thoroughly enjoying this. But I think you've alluded to a little bit of this. But in the next kind of 18 months, 2 years, what are we seeing from Zoie? Of course, you've got a great new product coming to market, and there's going to be some figuring out there. We get that. You're also currently fundraising, which I hope you don't mind me disclosing. But I think folks listening in will be inclined to want to know that. Talk to us. What can we see from you? What can we see from the business?
Jeez. Yeah.
God willing, in the next 18 months.
Yeah, I know. So 18 months is like dog years.
I know.
So it could be like a whole other lifetime. But look, at the end of the day, we're staying true to our ethos. How do we provide affordable and accessible healthcare using technology? And so hopefully our B2B product, I see that having penetrated the South African market, some good clients on board, ideally would have broken cash flow break even and on a path to profitability. I think importantly starting to explore outside of the country, because I think, there are gaps in South Africa, but I think there's certainly deeper gaps, more gaps within Africa and also the global South, right? And so I hope that we would have, kind of gotten the product right, have many, many happy customers, growing that product, path to profitability, but also starting to try and make an impact in other parts of the continent where people do need, good access to basic healthcare. And so, yeah, maybe we'll be multinational by then, or at least on a path to. I hope so.
Amazing. Yeah, listen, may it come to pass. I think the final question, and it's one thing that we always ask our founders or guests on the podcast. You and I are probably going to start many things in our lives, and this might be the thing, or it might be the only thing, who knows? But one day we're going to be old people sitting on a stoop looking out at the view and reflecting on all of this.
Sure.
What for you, and it doesn't have to be linked to Zoie, it can be personal. What for you what does success look like for Thato? At the back of all this, it might be a desert island one day that you've bought in your super yacht waving to your friend. I don't know, right? But I mean, what is it? What does success mean or look like for you as Thato Schermer?
I think, first and foremost is living a life of service and having been able to serve people and impacting their lives positively, both, in a personal kind of circle, friends, family, but also on a macro scale. I really want to use my time here and my energy to leave people better, and figure out ways to do that. And I'm hoping and I believe that should be through business that makes a positive impact, so whether it's Zoie or other ventures. But success looks like looking back and saying, we built something or some things that were able to make a difference to people's day-to-day lives, and impacted them positively, even in a small way, and that we had fun doing it. I think I was talking to a fellow founder the other day. She's a founder of a fintech company, and we were laughing about how painful this journey is. It's like you're walking on coals. But we asked ourselves, like, would we be doing anything else? No, we wouldn't be. And it's incredibly fun, really hard, but incredibly fun. And so being able to have fun on a journey of hopefully making a positive impact on people's lives, I think should be a life well lived.
Amazing. And I think just such a wonderful note on which to conclude our conversation. Thato, really, we are incredibly excited by what we've seen, but also I'm sure what we're going to see in the next 2 years, 6 months. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of, firstly, your time today, and obviously some of the insights to the Zoie journey. May it just absolutely explode positively from here on in.
So.
We're very, very grateful to have you on the show today. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Thato Schermer, co-founder and CEO of Zoie Health.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. That was Thato Schermer, co-founder and CEO of Zoie Health. I'm Matthew Marsden, and again, if you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on our socials, and be sure to share this with your network. We look forward to seeing you next time.